Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here. Hi there, this is Angela, and I'm just popping in to let you know that this week's podcast episode is brought to you by the Aligned program. Now, this is my group business mentoring program that I run just twice a year, and the next program starts on June the 1st. It's a 6-week journey into confidence, clarity, and wholehearted client attraction, and it's perfect for you if you are standing on the edge of creating or growing your next chapter business. What I know for sure is that we need to anchor ourselves in such a great feeling of value and worthiness that what it is that you have to share with the world is absolutely needed. And so that's always the anchoring point where I start the Aligned program experience. From there, we're going to be diving into all things business. We'll be looking at how to use your story and your background to get your message across and to connect with your most aligned clients. We'll be looking at wholehearted marketing and sales. We'll be looking at creating a framework for you to actually nestle your business within. There's all sorts of goodness within the 6 weeks, including 2 fantastic guest presenters who'll be talking to you about storytelling and also about soulful client pathways from discovery right through to investment. It really is an action-packed and rich and deep program that can make an enormous difference to the business that you are longing to create. So pop over and see if the program is a good fit for you. Go to angelarasmus.com/aligned. I'd love to be your guide if it feels resonant for where you are at the moment in your next chapter. Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela Rasmus. Now this week we get to have a wholehearted conversation with Sharleen Greer from New Zealand. Now Sharleen's had many chapters, but there's been a common thread that runs through all of them. She was definitely born a helper. She's a connector and she's also a teacher. She's trained in nursing, naturopathy and counselling before having her kids. Most of her early mothering years, she was working as a childbirth educator, but then she actually found herself pregnant again at 40 with her 4th daughter and was thrown into her own midlife crisis. She stopped all her work at the time and concentrated on creativity, on exploring what being an artist meant to her. And I'm sure you'll love the story that we share within the podcast about when she first actually went into painting for the petrified and found that it really wasn't for her. But that opportunity, that ability to allow her curiosity to try new things opened up a whole new world. And listen for that when around the middle of the podcast. But anyway, 15 years later, 2 daughters of hers are overseas, another 2 are nearly joining them. She's been able to open a new chapter in her life. Sharleen's trained as a life coach and she has started a business called Midlife Courage. Now she's really keen to hold the hands of all midlife women who are wanting to go from, just like she did, from midlife crisis through to midlife courage, where reconnecting and cultivating pleasure and play and purpose feels like a really attractive option. Now, Sharleen, being a fellow Kiwi, really has such an open way of describing and sharing the journey that she's been on, but also immense wisdom that is really, really captivating. I love the way in which she has been sharing in this conversation the different skills and tools that she had to develop to really explore this next chapter in her life. And she's really sharing with us some great insights around getting back in touch with your values, with understanding what is it that's important to you now, because there's no doubt that that would have changed over the last years. And we get to this point where we have this sort of desire to do more and to be more and to change and be different, but sometimes we're paralyzed and we're not sure what is it that we want to do. So we delve down deeply into following the breadcrumbs to find what those things are for you. Now with Sharleen, she definitely opened up her life to pleasure and play and purpose, but it also opened to starting her own business. Now she had a business back in her 20s, but life then took over. And she does speak very openly about how in the early years, business seemed really simple. You just opened up your shop and chucked out a few flyers and off you went. But of course, these days, it's not quite so simple. There's so many more pieces to it. And that's why courage has got to be such a large part of the journey. And really looking at finding that space between taking action and also sitting back and allowing. And her and I talked about that space between allowing and action is really where trust comes in. And that's where your ability to be connected to your vision, to your values, and to listen to your intuition plays a really big part in creating this next chapter. So much goodness to share in this conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. So sit back or put your hands on the steering wheel wherever you happen to be and open up and listen to this Next Chapter podcast. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Well, hello there and welcome to episode 20 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. Thanks for choosing to spend your time with us today. And today I have a wholehearted conversation coming up with a gorgeous woman from New Zealand by the name of Sharleen Greer, who is a midlife coach, taking women from midlife crisis right up through into the middle of midlife courage. And doesn't that sound delicious? So Sharleen, thank you so much for spending your time here with us today.
Oh, look, Angela, it is my pleasure. And I thought I would just say to you that we know both of us like talking. And I'm also a bit of what I call a squiggle. I have a bit of a popcorn brain. So please, I give you permission to bring me back if I go off on a tangent.
Well, let's give each other that permission because you're right. We could talk for hours. That's the whole purpose of these conversations on the Next Chapter podcast is to give people that opportunity to hear these unscripted chats and to take inspiration from them. So I'm sure whatever comes out of us today, people listening are supposed to hear it. So it's all good, my darling.
Thank you.
Now, when our paths first crossed, you mentioned to me a quote that you saw that really opened up your next chapter for you. And that quote was, "Women die in their 50s, but they're not buried until their 80s." And that really shook me up when I heard that. And it obviously had the same impact on you as well. So can you talk to us about how that perhaps was one of the catalysts for opening up your next chapter and the work that you're doing in the world today?
Well, it was a bit of serendipity, when you're going through things, just something appears. So I was online and I saw that quote. I was already in that place of turning 50 and wondering what my next stage or my next chapter would be. I read that wonderful book, The Big Leap, and it had some quite powerful questions in it, and I couldn't answer any of them, and it was all about your purpose and what your next stage is, and it kind of threw me into a bit of a I don't know what I'm going to be doing now. And then I got online and I saw that quote and I thought, wow, potentially I've still got at least 30 years, so I need to make these count. So I really need to start looking at what it is I want to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That idea comes through in a lot of the conversations that I've been having, is that we almost reach that point of reckoning. It's like, whoa, what's next? There is, I want to leave a bit of a legacy. And I don't mean, necessarily change the world, but what has my life been to now, and what can I do with it for the rest of the years that I have left? And that's not in any sort of, doomsday mode, like, oh my gosh, we're all going to die one day, even though we are. But it's that wanting that quality and that significance and to make that contribution. That seems to be the real pull that brings women forward into the next chapter. Is that what you were feeling?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Yes, I was, I felt like I'd had quite a few chapters, and the chapter beforehand, I'd kind of not done with it, but I realised that as I got older, I wanted to start doing what I really wanted to do, and I knew that one of my sweet spots is going overseas to somewhere where it's hot and going to conferences. And so it was like, I need to be able to pay for them, so I need some more financial freedom. That was really important for me. So, it's like, okay, I've had businesses in the past. Let's come up with a business idea that I could do. And it's interesting because life coaching, I thought I'd finished working with people. I went through a bit of a crisis when I found out I was pregnant at 40, and I thought, okay, I've got nothing more to give. I'm not going to be working with people anymore, because I'd always been in the wellness profession. So it was quite a surprise to me when I saw this local paper, this ad for life coaching, and it's kind of like one of those breadcrumb moments. You think, oh, what's this about? Followed it up and went to the interview, had the money to pay for some training and life coaching, and it just all sort of took off from there. So it was a real kind of surprise to me, I suppose, because I was open and looking for signs of what my next step would be. It just kind of started all falling into place.
I love how you describe that as a breadcrumb moment, and we can see that when we look backwards, can't we? We can see how that one led to that one, led to that one, but it's that being open to recognising that first breadcrumb. I think that's the key point, is allowing ourselves or giving ourselves permission to be open and to become aware of what it was that is grabbing us. What's piquing the curiosity? Which breadcrumb should we pick up? Were you aware of how you sort of switched on that feeling of beginning to look around and recognise what grabbed you?
Yes, I think I was. I think I've always been quite aware of my own kind of process. I think it came back to when I was in, 28, which is often a pivotal time in astrological. They call it the Saturn return, the 7-year cycle. So 28 is the 4 sevens, and it's often quite a spiritual time. And I did a counselling course back then for 2 years called psychosynthesis counselling, which really, I suppose the bottom line of that training is that if someone's got something mentally going on, they also believe that there's something spiritually going on. So from doing that training way back then, it really kind of opened my eyes and opened me up to really kind of watch my own process. So, it gave me a wonderful skill that I've been able to use, right up to today, really.
And I love how you often talked about how you want to help women begin to build a life that's based on how they want to feel. But I know that some of the conversations that I've had, we can lose touch with what it is that we want, or with what it is that lights us up. Especially when you're at this midlife point where for a lot of women, we've spent a huge amount of our time looking after others. And, I asked somebody, so what is it that you enjoy? And then there's like a bit of silence there. So how do you go about with the women that you're supporting and helping to open them to this more interesting and exciting and joyful midlife? How do we get reconnected or open to what it is that lights us up?
Yes, it's an interesting one, because when my clients come, I try and work out with them what they want to achieve often it's a 12-week package, and they're like, well, at the end of the package, I want to know what my next chapter is, and I want it all worked out. And I'm going, well, actually, it's kind of that mentality that I'm there to solve their problem. So kind of open, saying to them, look, I'm not promising that at the end of this time you'll know exactly what you want to do, but we can certainly, as you said, work towards what lights them up. And I've actually found it's a bit like what we talked about earlier with the breadcrumbs. It's like going way back to what it is that you enjoyed doing when you were a child, when you got really lost in time. I think of that word, which is pretty hyped now, mindfulness, but as a child, when you're so deep into that play that you enjoy and you forget about time and space and that sort of thing. So I start trying to get them to look at what it was that they enjoyed back there before we had all those kind of creativity scars put on us, either from the church or the parents or school is often, one of the things that disempower us from our creativity and whatnot. So that's kind of, I just get them to start looking. I mean, I know life coaching is all about moving forward, but I also think there's some value at not getting stuck in the past, but looking at what it is that you really enjoyed. And as you said, what lit you up.
And you're right. I mean, life coaching and any type of coaching does look upon, okay, where are we going now? But I'm an absolute believer in to have a look at your past, not get stuck there, but to turn around and reference it. It helps you understand how you got to perhaps where you are. And in particular, you can look for what I refer to as the diamonds in your dirt. Where are those moments, those experiences that you've had that, at the time might have looked pretty rocky, but you've drawn strength from those and experience and wisdom that you can share with others. And then looking a little deeper and seeing where were those moments of joy. I mean, you're funny, as you're talking, you're making me think of, what it was when I was a kid. I grew up on a farm in New Zealand. And some of my most joyful moments were heavily, imbued in imagination, making up stories. And I had little plastic animals that I used to create whole worlds with down in the garden, and that whole bit. And it was the power of imagination and self-expression, and just was a big part of that. And interestingly enough, when I look at the sort of work I do today, self-expression and imagination and writing and speaking is all very much a part of that.
Yes, definitely. It was interesting for me because when I went back to have a look at my childhood, I realised my mother or my parents had 5 under 5. Whoa. So I just remember that we were en masse. It's been really hard for me. I've had to really dig deep to get to that gold of what it was that I enjoyed, because I just always saw us as a mass. We did everything together, obviously, with Mum having 5 under 5. We even had a pram that could fit the 5 of us on it. But it's been quite a stretch for me to really, really search to what it was I did, enjoy in those games and things. So, and to get a voice and to be seen around it rather than thinking I was one of a little pack.
I've got this vision of you just moving in this concerted pack.
Yeah.
But and on your bio that I've shared, and that is on the page for the podcast as well. You've had a lot of rich and deep and wide experience. So it's not a case that we get to this stage in life and we're ungrateful for what's gone in the past, or that our first half of our life was somehow a dress rehearsal and now the real stuff begins. It's not that. It's just, we change, we grow, we expand, other things become important to us. And I've often had conversations on the podcast about the spiritual curiosity that tends to kick in at a certain sort of stage of life when we begin to open to new things, but sometimes without having a navigator with us who can open a few doors and give us a little bit of guidance, whether that way shower comes through books or from listening to something like this or working with a coach. But it doesn't all happen overnight. I mean, you yourself have really said that it's really the last 2 years when things started moving quickly and when you move more into joy and more into abundance. Why do you think things really took off in those last 24 months?
Well, I decided to open this business called Midlife Courage. And if someone had said to me that becoming a businesswoman was going to be one of the biggest personal growth journeys you went on, well, I would have put on my big girl pants a long time ago. I had a business before I had children, so back in my early 20s, and that seemed easy, counselling, and it just kind of happened. But I think back then it was like you put up a few flyers and made some phone calls and that was it. And I also think once you start becoming a mother, you kind of lose yourself in it. So you've got to kind of build up your confidence again. So that was kind of probably in the last 2 years. That was the first step, was really having to build up my confidence, and also doing a lot of changing around my mind belief that I'm not a salesperson. I don't come from a marketing background. It was the boys in the family that learnt that. We were the ones that were, used to stay at home and do the cooking and the nurturing and that sort of thing. So, having to change that mindset that for words that and beliefs that sound better for me, that fit me, and that I still don't use the word sales and marketing very much. I tend to say that I'm a connector, because I know that from a very young age I connect people, and I've always been a teacher, so finding words that fit me so that I can move forward and into this whole business world that I've found myself in. And it has been a stretch, because even the thing like social media and going online and all those sorts of things, it was like, wow, I never thought I'd kind of would have to learn all about that with part of my plan. I suppose I thought I'd put out a few flyers and get a few women. And I mean, that did start to happen, but it's so much bigger. And it's been fun. It's been fun, but also a bit of a stretch at times.
It's definitely a stretch when we step into these new ideas and these new opportunities. And you also feature in the ebook and audiobook that I've created, which you'll find on my website at the moment, which is all about increasing confidence and self-belief. So what I'd like to ask you on that point is, it sounds as though, you started with a bit of an essence of courage inside for you to take this leap and actually, tackle social media and tackle connection or sales, whichever way you want to describe it. But where did that start from? Like, imagine someone who's listening to us right now and thinking, well, it's all very well for you, Sharleen. You sound like, you've got it together. But where do we start? If we have a desire, but we are lacking in the personal confidence, what's some of the first steps that we could take to sort of strengthen that confidence muscle, do you think?
Well, I think to get some help. Don't do it on your own. I've always had some really strong, what you call, and I've taken on this term too because I love it, is belief buddies. I've always been in a goal-setting group with a group of, we're down to 3 of us now, but we meet monthly and talk about goals and things. So that's been fantastic, knowing that I've got people that I can rely on. Starting to read books and podcasts. I love going to conferences, as I said, so going to some conferences, and also surrounding myself with people that I think, wow, I really like what she's doing and I want to learn from her. So, really not going it alone, I think, is what really got me off the ground. And asking for help. Women, we find it hard to ask for help. And also, as well as asking for help, also investing in ourselves. It's been so easy for me to spend money on my children. My 4 daughters, have all danced, and the amount of money we put out to them. But then to turn it around and say, realising kind of about a third of the way in this business journey, that I needed a coach. And it was like, to invest that money on my own self was a pretty, scary leap for me, but so necessary. And it's just, I just thought, well, this is really interesting, isn't it, that to spend that money on ourselves. So not going it alone. And also I've always journaled. So I've had periods when I haven't done it as much, but I've certainly been doing it. It's kind of my best friend as well. So writing all these thoughts down, writing all the ideas down, writing captions that you get out of books and podcasts, and then I started doing in my journal the gratitude, and that, we hear a lot about gratitude and the power of it, and it's when I started, it was like, oh yes, I love my family, I love where I live, and then it was quite difficult, whereas now I can just, do a whole lot. So I think realising that by doing those gratitudes, that I actually do have my own answers, and I've kind of built my own inner coach. So as I said in your wonderful ebook, I've kind of turned down the volume on my inner critic big time and turned up the volume on my inner coach. It's been another really valuable skill.
What I'm hearing from everything you're saying there, Sharleen, is that you've been so active. You haven't sat and waited for confidence to come and knock on the door. You haven't waited until like, oh, yep, I'm feeling really, really like I've got all my ducks in a row. I can now go out there and create the business. You took so many steps and really immersed yourself in positivity and possibility to create the environment that would allow you to flourish. So this is a really active process.
Yes, it is, and that's kind of been my style. And in that, it's interesting that you're bringing this up, because this year I've actually been less kind of what we've been sharing. I see that more as like, in some ways, it's been great. I've been really active, but I'm also, it's a bit of it has to be hard and a bit of a push. Whereas this year, I decided that I was just going to step back a bit and let things flow a bit. Mm-hmm. And that's, in some ways, I was forced to do that because of a slight illness. But it was amazing. It was quite difficult. It was kind of like, how do you allow yourself to just be and go with the flow, but also still needing to do the action so that things keep happening. You know, we can't just sit at home and meditate and manifest. We also have to do the action. So that's been really interesting. But boy, just having that, balancing the action with the flow, or the hustle with the flow, it's really just taken me to another level. It's kind of like I've shifted more layers, taken off more heavy cloaks, and it's really allowed me to get even more become my niche market and my why I'm doing this, and my captivating statement. All those sorts of things have just really, really become even clearer. So yes, I've acted, and now I'm also seeing the balance of being able to, you know, go with the flow and also the action side of it.
I think you're right. There is definitely a balance, that space between action and allowing, where trust lives. That
yes,
if you're following your intuition, if you're allowing yourself to listen to your body barometer, to how you're thinking and feeling about things, and then course correcting or adjusting from there. But those first steps that you're taking, the most important lesson is for people to understand and to hear that you're not alone. I mean, you and I are having this conversation, but this conversation is being repeated all over the place with women who have decided that, or have got that feeling that there's something more that I want to step into. So that's the first message for you to hear, is that you're not alone. If you're feeling that, then yes, you're in very good company. And so to actually go and be seeking other people who have like-mindedness, because sometimes, and we covered this in the post, the Increase Your Confidence post, about sometimes you can be surrounded with people who aren't necessarily your biggest advocates, and they're not necessarily going to be your cheerleaders for you to go in a new direction, because they're used to the old you. And they're not totally comfortable always. And so sometimes our family and immediate friends are not our belief buddies. Sometimes we do need to reach out to new people who are doing and trying things that we are attracted to, or that we'd like to try on for size ourselves. And,
yes.
And going to conferences, like you said, you know, seeing an ad about life coaching in the newspaper, and if it piques your interest, giving yourself permission to actually go and explore that. So the courage piece comes in right at the beginning, doesn't it? Having the courage to listen to what's appealing to you and to act on it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. You do have to have the courage. And I suppose when you have one of those aha moments where you see a statement that says, you know, as we said in the earlier things, and you get this kind of feeling, you just think. It was interesting, because I thought, wow, I don't want to waste the next 30 years. And it was also like, oh, I've potentially still got at least 30 years. That's quite a while. I'm not old after all. There are things I have to offer. So that statement, even though it was a bit of an aha, it also helped me get in touch with, yes, I've had a lifetime of wisdom. I do have these skills and these knowledge and experiences that I can share with people, and realizing that midlife is just such an exciting, powerful, wonderful, wonderful time if we do get the courage, or allow ourselves to have the courage to open up, to explore, what could be around the corner.
You know, we're talking there a lot about the idea of stepping into creating a business and using, our lifetime of wisdom and knowledge and experiences that you can share with others. But there's also another side to it, isn't there? And that's which I know you're a champion for, and that's the idea of play. It's not all so darn serious. You don't have to work your butt off and do this and that. You can actually let go and have a bit of play in your life as well. And I know, for one, that that's not my strongest point, of actually, letting go and bringing in some spontaneity and some fun. So I'd love to hear from you how you've introduced or reawakened that part of yourself, because I think we can all benefit from it.
I've always had a bit of a creative side. Like when I was 40 and I found myself pregnant at 40 with number 4 daughter, I knew that I needed to have a break from the helping profession, I suppose I'll call it. I just had this inner voice say, explore what being an artist meant for you. And I was like, where did that come from? But it was like, yeah, I'm going to explore, I'm going to become a painter. I went to a course called Painting for the Petrified and hated it.
I love that name.
But in the next room was all these women, and they were working with wool and not in your traditional knitting, or they were using it wasn't wool, sorry, they were knitting, but they were using things like plastic bags cut up and wire and material. And I was like, oh, wow, that's me. So I joined, I transferred over and joined that class. And, I did. From my 40s to 50s, I got right back into something I did when I was a teenager, which was crocheting. And it sounds kind of funny, but I think a lot of us are looking for those kind of skills rather than the commercial world we live in, like getting back to craft. So that was a really wonderful, wonderful time, to be exploring that. But in terms of where I am now with play, I really owe a lot to, as a lot of us do, that have been exploring Brené Brown's work and, bringing vulnerability and shame in the open. And she talks about these guideposts to having a wholehearted life, and one of them was play. And I just decided I was going to bring more play in my life this year. And as you say, it's like, where do we start? But my husband has just always been into play. He says it's a male thing. We learn those hunting skills from playing. And, so through him, I suppose, I've started we live on an estuary, and I haven't kayaked for years and years. And he came in one night with all these sparkles in his eyes, talking about the phosphorescence in the water at night. And I was like, oh, I want some of that. So I've started kayaking again, just loving it. And I brought myself a power hoop and doing this hula hooping. And, just once again, it's the same, those breadcrumbs. What did we love doing? Playing knuckle bones, doing jigsaw puzzles, any of that play before those creativity scars, which Brené Brown talks about as well, are formed. What was it, as we said earlier, that we really love to do? You might have to go out and buy a whole lot of plastic farm animals, Angela.
You know what? I've actually got, that's funny, or it's not surprising really, I guess that one of the permanent toys that I bought for my kids, they're 17 and 13 now, so I don't think they'll come and play with me, but was a farmhouse and all the little plastic animals, and I got great delight. Wasn't so much into Barbie, but I liked hunkering down and pulling the tractors along beside them, so you can't take the farm girl out of me, I'm afraid. It's down to my core. But, what I'm hearing again from you, which is such an important message, yes, we have the breadcrumbs pieces to go back and find them, but again, you made a decision. You gave yourself permission and you made a decision. Like, you spoke to yourself and said, I want more play in my life. I'm going to introduce it. So I love that, how you've that's the power of personal choice, of conscious choice, of deciding to do something. And I think once you actually do that, it's almost like once you decided to buy a car and you hadn't seen that model anywhere, but now you see it everywhere. Once you decide to look for play, once you decide to look for joy, opportunities start to come into your world.
Yes, most definitely. And it's interesting, isn't it, that word joy, because I think when I was reading a book, Danielle Laporte, and she talked about joy, and I got quite upset, because for me it was like, what does joy actually mean? And I've been a good one lately and I might have heard it from you, Angela, of looking words up and exploring, what does joy actually mean and how does it feel? And I think last year I was like, I want more joy in my life. But I actually realised through the year that it wasn't joy that I started to experience. It was moments of happiness. When you get that giddy kind of feeling in your stomach and you feel young. You feel like when you play. But it's momentarily, whereas joy, which I'm still really exploring and trying to bring more in my life, but and really starting this year to get lots of more glimmer of what joy means to me. So, I really love that concept of looking up words and getting words that fit for you, especially around feelings. I knew what anger and grief and some of those darker feelings were as a child and growing up, but to actually, work out what some of these joyful feelings are has been, quite an interesting exercise for me.
Oh, you and I both there. That whole idea of the power of language and the words that we use, and having a almost like a broader emotional vocabulary. That, again, I think it's that conscious decision to, well, what does it mean? And most importantly, what does it mean to me? Is that I love the concept of joy. And for me, it's quite similar to what you just described as a moment of happiness. It's this feeling of, right now, everything's perfect. It's just like the colours are brighter, the birds are singing more. It's like a Disneyland moment maybe. But it's just, I feel incredibly present and grateful. And to me, joy is a quiet feeling. It's not a, blasting off and letting off the balloons and all that stuff. It's just this quiet feeling that bubbles up and just feels so wonderful. That's joy for me. And I gather those moments and I hold on to those moments because, it's those little moments that really do make life. And that feeling can come from having a wholehearted conversation on a podcast. It can come from getting off a call with a client where they've had a breakthrough and it just feels so damn exciting for them. I had a classic moment when we were away for a weekend and I was holding hands with my daughter and just walking through the water with her, and it was the classic Australian, blue sky, gum trees, just such a gorgeous day, and that feeling just bubbled up. So it's gathering those moments and holding them close so you can revisit them and recognise them when they bubble up again. Those strings, those moments that you can string together.
Yes, and I've also realised for me, and just what you were saying in that beautiful scenario with your daughter, it includes your senses. So it's like, what are you seeing? And the colours become brighter. And what are you feeling? And what are you, touching things? Like I've really the whole like velvet and silk and those kind of sensuous feeling of material and tasting even, and all those, like getting back in touch with our senses, I think also helps us get to that place of play and joy.
That is a great reminder, and for you who's listening right now, just lean into that for a moment. What gives you joy and pleasure and delight? It can be things that you hear, things that you taste, things that you touch, things that you do, just as Sharleen is describing. So just get curious and just know what they are, and then invite more of that into your life. Those moments of joy. We were going down the line talking about business development, and then suddenly we plunged into joy. I love how the two led to each other. If we go back and follow the breadcrumbs, we'll probably see how we got there.
I think it was when we opened up the flow and the action conversation.
Absolutely. Well, tell me, Sharleen, what do you think are the three or four most important skills that you've gained that have really moved you forward? And we've talked about those moments of joy, we've talked about decisions and breadcrumbs, but are there other tangible things that you can look back now with hindsight and see, aha, that opened a door and that opened another door for me? What skills do you really think have been pivotal in helping you open up into this next chapter?
Well, I think having that concept that we've been talking about of the hustle and the flow, that's been a really important skill for me to have. Because I've always been a very vision person. I can visualize and I have ideas, but to actually do the action, and before when I was talking about the squiggle, that's kind of more like a square personality. I've had to learn that. It's the doing and the detail and the planning that doesn't come naturally for me. So having that awareness of how I have to have that balance and that trust to have vision and action side by side has been a huge skill. And that leads me into these personality profiles that there's so many models out there, from the Myers-Briggs right down to more simple ones, but actually learning a lot about my own personality has been huge. It's just given me, not only for myself, but how I see my children, how I see my clients. It's just made me view people in a much more heightened way. And then I also think the last skill, there's been so many, but I think another skill that has been very important for me through what I learned back in life coaching days was value to really know your values. Before I sat down at this life coaching program, I really hadn't done that before. And so to come up with my main values, and, once I was able to do that, it's kind of like it helped in so many ways. It helps with any decisions, going forward. It's like, if I'm making a decision, is this in alignment with my values? If it isn't, then pull away. So, getting in touch with my values, and also a bit like looking at the dictionary, like what they mean, what I thought were my values. And my values from 2 years ago have probably changed a little bit, because some of them back then were needs. This need to have financial freedom. I thought that was a value. So without, getting too caught up with it, it's you get the information, start with some values, and, and see if they fit. And if not, look for more. And so I think the values, the personality, and the vision and action would be the 3 skills that have really helped me to go forward.
Oh, they're really clear. That is great. And really recognizing that you may be a visionary person, and like planning, for example, may not come naturally, but it is a skill that we can learn. It's not like, well, no, I'm totally an imaginative person and I could never write a business plan. That's not true. You can actually focus and create that, but perhaps in a little bit more of an imaginative way. But there's certainly ways to bring your skills into the business puzzle. But I'd like to focus in there for a moment on, you talked about the learning about your personality. And I know that one of the great things that you provided us with is, as most of my guests do, provide a wonderful resource for our listeners to download. And we've got a personality profile, one that has shed light for you on who you are and how you show up in the world, and helps you work out where are some gaps to close, or sometimes where you've got to assume a slightly different personality in a certain situation to take action, as you described, or perhaps to understand another person and be a little bit more compassionate comes in as well. So I'd like you to talk to the 4 different personality types, and I'll just let us know that if you go to angelarasmus.com/20, that's the number 20 download, you'll also be able to test yourself and see which of these 4 personality areas that you fall into. So tell us about squiggles and squares and triangles and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, well, I'm not actually, I think it's better when you're doing the quiz that you're going to let your listeners know if there's an element of surprise to it, because otherwise we start getting back into our head and we think about what we should be. So rather than talk about, it's shape profiling, as you've probably gathered through me talking about squares and squiggles. I'm just going to put that aside, though, and use some other words which are parallel, like the pleaser or the player or the powerful person or the precise person. And in an ideal world, we could just kind of dive into whatever personality we need for different situations. And yes, it's been really, really helpful for me. And I think, I know that when I'm out there doing that sales and marketing, which doesn't come easy for me, I need to get into that powerful mode and be the powerful businesswoman. Obviously, when I want to go out and splash in the water and whatnot, I can be the playing personality. So just being able to get a full understanding of them, and it's quite funny because once the listeners do the quiz, they're kind of walking around and going, oh, so you're this and you're this, and so you can also play with it and have fun with it, but at a deeper level, I find it just been a very, very helpful tool. And it's a quiz to take, and we all like quizzes, finding out a little bit more about ourselves, don't we?
Absolutely. Then you've got my curiosity going. But I think it's true, and as you said a little earlier, that in particular, if you'd known that creating a business was going to be such a personal development, growth, curve, journey, learning, you might have started it a lot earlier. It's certainly personal development and business development are so entwined, especially in the next chapter, when we often, as we talked about, are bringing those experiences from our first chapters to actually birth that new business, because we're using our wisdom and our insights to help the people that are now our most aligned clients. And so understanding more about your own style and what makes you tick and other people tick, that can only be of benefit when you're looking to develop that sort of future.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Sharleen, I know all the work that you do in the world, that they're really helping these women embrace this courage and to open up to a whole new way of living and being in their next chapters, in their midlife, to create that courage is just fabulous work. So I understand, I think a little birdie told me, that you may have a retreat coming up for those women in New Zealand or from further afield who really want to dive into this, to really immerse themselves in this new way of living. Could you tell us about that? Because I'd love to know more.
Oh, yes, I'm very, very excited about this. One of the things I've realised this year with putting more flow into my life is that, I've spent the last kind of 4 or 5 months putting everything online, and then I've kind of done a full circle and realised what I love to do and what I've always done throughout my life in one form or another is teach and have groups of women together. Even when I was teaching crocheting, you kind of get into your right brain and all these stories come out. So I love women being together, sharing stories and learning. So it just made sense to me to run a retreat. So yes, I'm having the first one here in New Zealand at the end of June. We're just finalising the last of the details now, and basically it's called Reconnect and Cultivate Pleasure, Purpose and Play into your life. And for women, career women, inspiring women, motivating women, empowered women that want to be empowered, and how they can just take a pause, but hopefully we are taking pauses during the day, but this is a whole weekend. I think I likened it to going away and having a bit of a fear with yourself. Obviously you're going to be doing it with a group of other women, but just giving yourself permission to play for a weekend and have that pleasure, for women, pleasure, it's kind of being a bit indulgent and selfish, and those words have got a bit of bad press among us, but what does please us? What do we find beautiful? There'll be lots of pampering in it and healthy food, and there'll be an opportunity if someone wants to go and have a massage, but also looking at some of these tools that I've been sharing with you about values and your love language and what are you passionate about and all those sorts of things. So, it's from 4 o'clock Friday evening till 4 o'clock Sunday evening, 2 evenings out in the beautiful wilderness, and really, really looking forward to it.
I love that. And what I picked up from hearing you talk there was you said one of the key skills that has come to play is you getting back in touch with your values. And that's obviously now cascaded down into your business as well. And I relate to this one entirely. There's a lot of online businesses in the world, but if one of your values is connection, which is what you said right at the beginning of our conversation, then hosting a retreat like this where you can connect with other women, where you can connect women together, and most importantly, you can reconnect women back with pleasure and purpose and play, then that's totally aligned with your core values, and it has to be a part of your business.
Yes, and I get really excited. I think it's going to be the highlight of the first 6 months of my year, and so I hope some of your listeners are getting excited about it as well. And then it also fits into that original sweet spot of mine of wanting to go over to conferences and stuff. It's like, hello, I can actually hold the conferences. Next year I want to go and do one in Bali, and I love the Pacific Islands, and my 2 oldest daughters are in the Gold Coast, all those kind of places. So I see this retreat this year as the very beginning of a New Zealand one, but, branching out overseas next year, hopefully.
Oh, completely. Look, I think whoever is listening, I think if you're feeling the pull, if the message that you're hearing from Sharleen, and you can hear that playfulness just in the way that she puts everything across, as well as the deep wisdom and experience that's allowed her to create her own next chapter. You want a piece of that? You want to have that same sort of feeling of buoyancy and joyfulness and courage? I reckon you've got to jump in there and reserve yourself a ticket straight away.
Thank you.
I'll make sure we put all the details on the podcast page for sure. And where else can we find you, Sharleen? Can you share where your online home is and your social media home so that the women listening who are feeling the connection can take it that step further?
So do you want my website details? Yeah, sure. www.sharleengreer.co.nz. And then on Facebook, that's the, Facebook, Pinterest, I love them both. But my business is on Facebook, once again, www.facebook.com/Midlife Courage. And I also have through Facebook a private group for women, which is called Magic Follows Action. And, people are more than welcome to join that group as well. And it's more or less an accountability group. Sunday we do, I offer a tool. Monday we do actions for the week. Wednesday I offer a quote. And then on Friday we do a celebration. So, that's another way that people can start getting a flavour of what I'm about.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that those links are all on the page as well if anyone chooses to visit there so that they can connect straight across to you. Oh, this has been one of those wonderful conversations that for me feels really energizing. That's part of the feeling that I always get when you and I are in conversation. There's that feeling of energy and of positivity, and of course there's that nice slither of play that slides in from the side as well. So I'm certainly going to be starting to look for the breadcrumbs, because that's an intention that I have, to invite more play and lightness into my life. Because we can't always be hustling; it's just exhausting. So I thank you for opening that window for me.
Oh, well, can I finish with a quote that I think is quite relevant? And it's a Picasso quote, and he says that we spend the first half of our life learning how to be a grown-up. We spend the second half of our life learning how to be a child again.
Well, I think there's great power in becoming childlike again.
Definitely. And isn't it interesting that old people, geriatrics, when they're at the end of their life, they get back to that womb. And my dad said he kind of rocks on the end of his bed at night before he goes to bed, and he feels quite childlike, and he just has memories of when he was younger going through his head. So it's, that full circle. So we're in midlife. It's learning to bring that those childlike essences of joy back into our life.
Absolutely. We're at such a powerful point where we can pull on all different experiences that we've had and really consciously create that joyful, enjoyable, fulfilling, exciting, possibility-filled next chapter. So thank you for opening the door to that for us today, Sharleen. It's been a delight talking with you.
Oh, my pleasure, Angela.
And everyone that spent their time or your time listening today to the Next Chapter podcast, we really appreciate you spending the time with us. Don't forget to go along and download that exercise so we can find out which of those shape profiles you are. Just another way of increasing yourself, your personal knowledge, and also the way you show up in the world and the way that you can understand others. So again, to reach that resource, you just go to angelarasmus.com/20 download. And you'll be able to find out which of those shapes are you. So I hope that by listening to this wholehearted conversation, another door of possibility is opening for you. The whole purpose behind this podcast is to inspire and to be a catalyst, to be a link in your chain as you open up to what's possible for you in your next chapter. And we'd love to know what's unfolding. So please join the conversation. Pop across to the Your Next Chapter podcast page and leave some feedback. You can either be on iTunes and leave us a review if you're really finding that these conversations are being helpful or inspiring for you. That allows the podcast to be found by more women who need to also get that courage and that little spur of inspiration to move into their own next chapters. So thanks so much again for investing your time with us, and have a lovely day. This is Angela Rasmus, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelarasmus.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.